What if I told you that the most productive food plants on Earth aren't towering apple trees or sprawling peach orchards? They're compact enough to thrive in a container on your balcony. Crops that experienced homesteaders and market gardeners have cultivated for generations. Varieties that will completely outclass your fruit trees in output per square foot, return on investment, and labor efficiency. Most gardeners spend years tending a fruit tree, waiting patiently for maturity, battling diseases and insect pressure, never noticing the high-performing, space-efficient producers sitting right under their noses. Today, I'm revealing 20 of them. These aren't theoretical suggestions. They're proven performers with documented harvests. Crops that professional growers depend on while amateurs plant orchards. Stay tuned because Entry 13 yields hundreds of fruits from one plant per season, and Entry 20 is so productive and persistent that growers harvest it weekly, nearly forever, from a space tinier than a welcome mat. Subscribe now. We release weekly content about maximizing harvests in minimal space, minimizing costs, and creating true food independence. Let's dive in. Here are 20 compact plants that outperform fruit trees, ordered from remarkable to unbelievable. Number 1. Strawberries, the self-replicating producer. Let's begin with strawberries, because no other entry makes a stronger impact once you grasp its mechanics. One strawberry plant yields roughly 3 pounds per season. That's not the remarkable part. The magic happens afterward. Strawberries deploy runners, horizontal stems that root automatically, and spawning entirely new plants without your intervention. 1 becomes 5, 5 becomes 25, 25 becomes 100. A strawberry bed doesn't merely generate berries. It generates berries plus new producers simultaneously. Contrast this with fruit trees. You install a tree and wait 3 years, 5 years, sometimes longer for substantial harvests. Meanwhile, your strawberries are fruiting months and silently assembling a colony of new plants. Variety selection matters. June-bearing types deliver one massive early summer harvest, ideal for preservation. Ever-bearing types offer smaller, steady harvests all season, better for fresh consumption. Strawberries were dismissed as serious crops because they're so commonplace. We view them as pleasant garden extras, not food security assets. But crunch the numbers. 3 pounds per plant, automatic multiplication, first-year fruiting. Strawberries aren't decorative accents. They're among the most efficient food systems in nature. Consider them the plant that repays you, then dispatches its offspring to repay you repeatedly. Number 2. Raspberries, the vertical output engine. Here's a plant that discovered what many growers miss. Grow upward, not outward. Raspberries bear fruit on tall vertical canes, enabling dense row planting, trellis training, and massive yields from slim ground strips. An established raspberry bed produces heavily for years, with minimal maintenance once established. The biology is elegant. Raspberries generate 2 cane types, primocanes, year 1 growth, and floricanes, year 2 fruiting. Master this rhythm and you achieve continuous production, removing spent canes post-harvest, while next year's canes develop behind them. Summer-bearing and fall-bearing types offer flexibility. Some growers cultivate both, extending harvest from midsummer through frost. What distinguishes raspberries from fruit trees isn't merely yield, it's establishment speed. Plant bare root canes in spring and harvest meaningful quantities within 18 months. No fruit tree approaches that schedule. Raspberries were undervalued because canes are thorny and management appears complex initially. But once you comprehend the 2-year cane cycle, management becomes straightforward. It's the plant that rewards those who invested 10 minutes understanding its logic. Number 3. Blackberries, the unstoppable generator. If raspberries are the refined and well-mannered caneberry relative, blackberries are the ones that arrive and dominate the area. Blackberries are almost aggressively productive. 2 to 3 pounds per plant yearly is conservative. In favorable conditions with mature plants, you can exceed this significantly. They root wherever cane tips contact soil. They thrive in poor earth. They need little attention, and they fruit heavily even in partial shade where other crops struggle. Modern thornless varieties eliminated the primary objection. Types like Triple Crown and Chester yield enormous sweet berries on canes that won't lacerate your arms. Here's why blackberries constitute genuine food security. They demand almost nothing and return abundantly. No spraying, no complex pruning calendars, no costly inputs. Install them, provide support, and step aside. Blackberries were avoided in home gardens because wild types are invasive weeds, creating guilt by association. But managed, thornless varieties with controlled roots are entirely different. They're the plant unjustly condemned for its wild relative's conduct. Number 4. Blueberries. The patient investment. Blueberries demand the most patience here, but the payoff is extraordinary. A mature blueberry bush, 5 to 7 years for full maturity, can yield 10 to 20 pounds yearly from a 4-foot by 3-foot shrub. Calculate this against an apple tree yielding 40 to 60 pounds, but requiring 10-foot canopy spread, and blueberries appear remarkably space efficient. The challenge is soil. Blueberries need acidity, pH 4.5 to 5.5, that most gardens lack. You either amend with sulfur gradually or grow in raised beds or containers with acidic peat perlite mix. This is where many abandon blueberries, but those solving the soil puzzle reap rewards for decades. Plant multiple varieties for cross-pollination. Early, mid, and late types stretch harvest across 6 to 8 summer weeks. Blueberries were bypassed because establishment is slow and soil needs seem fussy. But growers, recognizing they were installing a 20-year asset, not a quick crop, built blueberry patches that now feed their families each summer nearly automatically. They're the plant, teaching you patience versus wasted time. Number 5. Currants, the overlooked superfood hedge. Now we're exploring plants most American growers have nearly forgotten. A genuine tragedy. Currants, red and black, rank among the most productive small fruit shrubs existing. They fruit heavily within years of planting. They tolerate partial shade better than nearly any fruiting plant. They're disease-resistant. They need almost no care, and they form dense, productive hedges that simultaneously yield food and provide garden structure. Black currants, especially, are nutritional powerhouses. Vitamin C content extraordinarily exceeds oranges, with intense, complex flavor unavailable commercially. One established currant bush yields 4 to 10 pounds yearly from a footprint smaller than most patio chairs. Currants were legally prohibited in many states early last century due to white pine disease concerns. Most bans lifted, but currants vanished from American growing consciousness. An entire generation grew up unaware this extraordinary plant existed. It's the fruit that prohibition stole from American gardens, and most don't even know to resent it. Number 6. Gooseberries. High density, high return. Gooseberries are currants' equally forgotten relatives, deserving identical rehabilitation. Compact gooseberry bushes pack astonishing fruit quantities onto branches. Berries cluster along every stem, and at peak production, the entire bush resembles harvest festival decorations. A well-grown gooseberry bush yields 5 to 10 pounds yearly. The flavor of a perfectly ripe gooseberry, sun-warmed, soft, bursting with sweet-tart balance, is something most Americans have simply never experienced. European growers always understood their value. American growers largely forgot. Gooseberries tolerate heavy clay and partial shade better than most fruits. They're cold-hardy. They're not particularly pest-prone. They produce reliably year after year with minimal intervention. What eliminated gooseberries from American awareness was the same white pine blister rust scare affecting currants, combined with post-war supermarket culture where only commercially shippable fruits mattered. Gooseberries don't transport well. They're a garden fruit meant for immediate consumption. That's not weakness, it's invitation. They're the fruit supermarkets couldn't commercialize, so they pretended it didn't exist. Number 7. Honeyberries. Haskap. Spring's first harvest. Honeyberries solve a problem you might not recognize. What do you harvest when everything else remains weeks away? Haskap berries ripen before strawberries, before cherries, sometimes before any other garden fruit. If you've stood in your garden in late May, craving something fresh and homegrown, honeyberries answer. The bushes are cold hardy, almost unbelievably. Some varieties survive below -40 degrees. They thrive where other berries struggle. The fruit is oblong, deep blue-purple, tasting like blueberry-raspberry fusion with floral hints. Plant multiple varieties for pollination, and your bushes reward you for decades. The shrubs are long-lived, low-maintenance, and reliably productive once established. Honeyberries remain essentially unknown in mainstream American gardening, as relatively recent introductions from Siberian and Japanese wild variety breeding, commercial infrastructure hasn't caught up to their quality. Early northern climate adopters now possess some of the most productive early-season small fruit plantings in their regions. They're the plant that will dominate in 10 years, and you can have it today. Number 8. Lingonberries, the evergreen berry factory. Lingonberries are tiny. The shrubs are tiny, often 6 to 12 inches. The berries are tiny, but packed together as ground cover, production per square foot becomes remarkable. These small evergreen shrubs from Scandinavian and subarctic ecosystems generate heavy bright red berry clusters in late summer, often again in fall. They're extremely cold hardy. They retain leaves through winter. They thrive in acidic soils like blueberries, spreading slowly via underground runners to fill available space. If you've eaten IKEA's Swedish meatballs with that distinctive tart red sauce, you've tasted lingonberry. In Scandinavia, lingonberry jam is as essential as ketchup is in America, ubiquitous and beloved. Yet, in American gardens, almost nobody grows them. The flavor is sharper and more complex than cranberry, with tartness pairing brilliantly with savory dishes, game, and rich cheeses. The nutritional profile is excellent, and once established, lingonberry ground cover essentially maintains itself. Lingonberries were missed in American food culture simply because no commercial infrastructure introduced them. They don't ship or store like cranberries. They're a garden crop for growers, meaning those who grow them possess something genuinely special neighbors lack. They're the secret Scandinavians kept for centuries, quietly cultivating while we weren't watching. Number 9. Aronia, chokeberry, the superfood shrub. Here's a plant the health food industry discovered, now selling expensively as powders and supplements. And it might already grow ornamentally in your neighborhood. Unrecognized as edible, Aronia berries grow in massive, heavy clusters, bending branches at peak ripeness. Yield per plant is extraordinary. A mature Aronia shrub produces 15 to 30 pounds yearly. The shrubs are native North American, cold-hardy, disease-resistant, drought-tolerant once established, and nearly maintenance-free. The flavor is intensely astringent fresh. The chokeberry name is accurate, but cooked, juiced, or dried, Aronia becomes exceptional. Anthocyanin content ranks among the highest of any berry, explaining its superfood supplement status. Those paying $30 for Aronia powder could simply grow 3 bushes. Aronia thrives in difficult conditions where other fruits fail. Wet soils, heavy clay, partial shade. Plant as hedge, windbreak, or slope stabilizer. And harvest massive quantities of one of nature's most antioxidant-dense foods from a plant essentially growing itself. Aronia was ignored as food because it was planted ornamentally for brilliant red fall foliage. Nobody informed American gardeners that those gorgeous shrubs bore edible, extraordinarily nutritious berries. It's the plant hiding in plain sight across suburban landscapes. Number 10. Sea buckthorn, compact varieties. The orange gold. We previously discussed sea buckthorn medicinally, but as food producers, compact varieties are extraordinary. Berries grow so densely along stems that harvesting resembles stripping beads from a string. Yield per shrub in good years is remarkable. Branches literally bend under the weight. Berries are intensely tart, extremely vitamin and omega-rich, absolutely brilliant orange. The juice is used across Russia and Central Asia as daily health tonic. The oil appears in premium skincare. Berries can be juiced, syrups made, smoothies boosted, or preserves created. 1 teaspoon of sea buckthorn juice exceeds multiple oranges' vitamin C. Compact, garden-suitable varieties are now available, far more manageable than wild plants' large, sprawling form. Plant male and female for pollination. 1 male serves several females. And harvest extraordinary quantities of one of the most nutritionally dense foods available from relatively compact plantings. Sea buckthorn was missed in American food culture because it grows wild in harsh, remote climates, and commercial accessibility infrastructure didn't exist until recently. Early adopters quietly process buckets of orange gold each fall from plants neighbors walk past unnoticing. It's the plant that sustained Siberia and the Himalayas for centuries, while the rest of the world slept. If you're already envisioning your backyard, where the blueberry patch, currant hedge, or raspberry row might go, hit like now. It signals this content matters and helps reach people building genuine food security and growing more from less. Subscribe and enable notifications. We post weekly about exactly this, growing smarter, not bigger. Now we shift from woody perennials to annual and perennial vegetables that absolutely destroy fruit trees in productivity per square foot. Number 11. Pole beans, the vertical protein factory. Here's where the list shifts gears. Vegetables producing with relentlessness, shrubs and trees cannot match. Pole beans rank among the most efficient food plants, existing when accounting for full season performance. They grow vertically on trellises, farming airspace otherwise unused. They fix atmospheric nitrogen, feeding soil while feeding you. And crucially, they produce continuously. Pick pole beans and more grow. Stop picking and production slows. The plant's biological imperative is seed production. As long as you harvest before seeds mature, it keeps producing. On a 6-foot by 8-foot trellis, pole beans can supply a family fresh beans multiple times weekly for 3 to 4 months. The food value is genuine. Beans provide protein, fiber, and significant nutrition unlike most fruit. When considering plants feeding families, not just providing treats, beans belong centrally. Pole beans were treated as humble garden staples rather than productivity marvels they actually are. Gardeners running vertical pole bean trellises, June through October, quietly harvest hundreds of dollars of produce from a few square feet. It's the protein factory, growing straight up, never stopping until frost ends it. Number 12. Peas. Pre-summer. Heavy production. Peas address a different challenge than most vegetables here. They produce in cool seasons, spring and fall, when other food plants are dormant or unproductive. A pea trellis in April and May, when nothing else is ready, is worth more to a food grower than almost anything. Yield per square foot is high. Harvest window is consistent. And fresh homegrown pea flavor, sweet, crisp, complex, is genuinely different from anything commercially available. Sugar snaps give you whole pods. I'm increasing yield per planting. Shelling peas provide high protein. Starchier types suit cooking and storage. Snow peas offer tender pods for fresh eating and stir fries. Each type serves its purpose. The limitation is heat. Peas stop producing and go to seed when summer arrives, but plant as early as soil can be worked. Trellis vertically and harvest aggressively to extend the window. Peas deliver weeks of heavy, continuous production during late spring's hungry gap when most gardens remain dormant. Peas were underestimated as cool season crops with limited utility, but paired with fall plantings, continuing when spring peas finish, they cover seasons other crops miss. They're the plant producing, while your fruit trees remain in blossom. Number 13. Cherry tomatoes, the hundreds of fruits plant. Here it is, the plant teased at the start. The one yielding hundreds of individual fruits from one plant per season. Cherry tomatoes are pound for pound, calorie for calorie, dollar for dollar, among the highest yielding garden crops existing. One vigorous, indeterminate cherry tomato plant, properly staked, properly fed, in full sun, can produce hundreds of tomatoes seasonally, multiple pounds weekly at peak. Consider what this means. From one plant occupying roughly 2 square feet, you harvest fresh fruit July through frost. Production is so relentless, most gardeners end up with more tomatoes than they can use. Varieties like Sun Gold, Black Cherry, and Sweet Million are legendary among food growers for reasons. Flavor grocery tomatoes cannot approach, production that doesn't quit, sweetness making them disappear faster than picking allows. Cultural requirements are significant. Full sun, consistent water, good fertility. But meet these, and a cherry tomato plant is the closest thing to a fruit tree growing in one season, except it produces first year from seed in 4 months. Cherry tomatoes were treated as garden novelties when they're actually serious food production tools. Anyone who's run a 3-plant trellis of indeterminate cherry tomatoes through a full season understands. They're the hundreds of fruits machine fitting in a deck pot, outproducing most dwarf fruit trees its first summer. Number 14. Trellised cucumbers, the explosive vine. Trellised cucumbers are fundamentally different from ground-sprawling types. Vertical trellising solves 3 problems simultaneously: keeping fruit clean and straight, maximizing air circulation, reducing disease, and enabling enormous cucumber quantities in tiny footprints. One trellis of 5 or 6 cucumber plants, 6 feet tall and wide, can produce dozens of cucumbers weekly during peak season. The key matches pole beans. Keep harvesting. The moment a cucumber reaches full maturity on vine, the plant slows. Harvest young, harvest often, and plants keep producing remarkably fast. A cucumber that's a small nub Monday can be ready Thursday. Cucumbers are among the most water-dense foods you can grow, significant in summer heat, when fresh garden cucumbers are cooling, hydrating, and essentially free once established. Cucumbers were undervalued as food production plants because they're seasonal and don't store well fresh. But during summer's peak production, trellised cucumber plantings generate more food per square foot weekly than almost anything else in the garden. They're the plant, proving a trellis isn't a garden accessory, it's a multiplier.